Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, on this podcast, I always try and demystify complex technologies and learn more about the kind of value that they can actually bring to businesses. In a nutshell, we look behind the buzzword and look at the actual value that they can offer. And I recently read about a few use cases from a company called Nyckel that has developed a machine learning platform that allows anyone to quickly develop and integrate machine learning functionality directly into their application. So I invited Oscar Beijbom onto the podcast to learn more about what they're doing there. And he's going to come on and share his story and also some incredibly cool use cases that should give everyone listening a little food for thought on the kind of value that this tech can bring to their business. And hopefully we can also clear up a few myths around how machine learning differs from artificial intelligence, how entrepreneurs and business owners can use machine learning to accelerate the growth of their companies, and also maybe a few tips on how developers can improve the accuracy of their machine learning model. But enough scene setting for me. Buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to California, where Oscar is waiting to share his story. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited. So my name is Oscar. I run Nyckel, which is a machine learning startup. I've been a machine learning researcher, engineer for 20 years or so. And most recently in the autonomous vehicle industry, ran a big team there trying to actually build the AI for one of the big robotaxi companies in the US. And then finally just decided to take the leap of faith and start this company with some friends instead.
It's an incredibly cool story. And I'd love to take you back even before then, though, before artificial intelligence and machine learning, and ask you, what's your origin story? Can you remember where that passion for technology came from, what lit the spark and ultimately put you on this path that you're on today?
I mean, it's, when I started, I did engineering physics in Lund, Sweden as my master's. And back then, AI was a really bad career choice. There was literally no jobs at all in Sweden. But I remember it was one of those things where I was just so fascinated by the idea of I was fascinated and also frustrated by the fact that it didn't work, right? So you have a computer just look at an image and sort of understand it, quote unquote, understand it, right? Or extract meaningful information out of it. And it just didn't work, right? And it was just kind of mind-boggling that it didn't work. So I was like, why doesn't it work? Like, this is such a cool idea to not explicitly tell the computer how to think, but more like kind of quote unquote learn and teach it how to think. So I actually leaped on it, jumped on it, even though it seemed like a bad idea at the time from a career perspective and so on.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then of course I got lucky. My first job out of college was this airbag bicycle helmet that came out of Sweden called Hövning. Have you heard about it?
No,
do you know about
tell me more.
Yeah, it's like this perpetual kind of news generator. I'm saying that because it's actually been around for 15 years now. And every few years it sort of makes the rounds here in the US about this crazy idea. So what it is that it's a collar, sort of like a collar you put around your neck, and you zip it up and you engage it. And in this collar is an airbag rolled up. And there's also a microchip and sensors and an AI. So then the idea is that as you're biking and you're falling off your bike, as you're flying through the air, the chip picks up the fact that you're in the middle of an accident, and then it inflates an airbag bicycle like a hood around your head. It's actually a rather thick and very well protective hood around your head. And so by the time you hit the ground, you're wearing a helmet. You're wearing an airbag helmet, basically. This is a real product. It's sold all over Europe. I don't know about the UK actually. So I was the first employee at that company, and there was two industrial designers who did it. So I was the first engineer on site that built picked out the sensors, picked out the hardware, wrote the code, and wrote the AI, trained the AI. And it's in production, it's working.
Wow. And presumably there's got to be some videos out there of it in action, of just people falling off bikes, right?
I mean, the company puts out, that, as part of their marketing, they put out a lot of videos. They usually have stunt people, I don't know if I've seen any like actual accidents, because it happens so fast, but yeah. No, the videos are really cool.
I was going to say, I think you've just given me my Friday night entertainment now. I'll be checking that out for sure. And of course, here in 2022, we are living at a time where every business has got service providers, software providers, all promising the next new shiny solution with artificial intelligence and machine learning. Many don't even have either of those things attached, but hey, it's the new buzzword. And one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast was to try and bust a few myths and clear up a few things. So to begin with, can I ask that you set the scene and just tell the listeners more about how machine learning differs from artificial intelligence? Let's just get that one out there straight away.
Yeah. So most people in my field, I've talked to engineers and colleagues, we never talk about AI. We talk about machine learning, because machine learning it's a pretty well-defined term. It's basically a branch of statistics where you model some set of input data, right? And then once you have that model, you could say something about new samples that are typically assumed to be drawn from the same distribution as the data that you train on. So that it's a pretty well understood, or well defined at least. I shouldn't say well understood, actually. It's actually very poorly understood. The theory is famously very lacking even in machine learning. Like the amount of utility we get out of applied machine learning today is very immense, right? Machine learning is powering everything. You get a lot of stuff we do on the internet, all the voice, all the image, I don't need to tell you that, that there's, but if you ask a machine learning theory guy why, it's very hard for them to say anything meaningful. So for example, in my career, I can't tell you how many times I got the question, I have this problem, how much data do I need to train, my machine learning algorithms? And I don't have a good answer because the theory isn't there, right? It's always going to be depending on the data, the difficulty of the data, the type of classes you want, and so on. But still, as lacking as the theory is, at least it's a well-defined field and problem formulation. Now, artificial intelligence is actually a pretty useless term in the sense that it's not very well defined. So a lot of things can be, I would say it's a bigger term. So machine learning is one implementation of AI, right? It's a well-defined implementation of something that could be thought of as an AI. Now, but AI is larger. So you could think of, for example, are you familiar with the Turing test?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so you have a chat bot, and then if the person on the other side can't tell if you're talking to a human or a computer program, then it's like you pass the AI pass the Turing test. So you can write a computer that doesn't use any machine learning. It doesn't have it's not really learning from data. It's just using rules. Like if you say hi, I say hi back, and so on. If you write enough rules, you can basically simulate something that is, in the truest sense, like an artificial intelligence, right? But if you look under the hood, it's just a bunch of rules, right? And those rules if those rules are written by a statistical analysis of a big body of text, then I would say it's machine learning, because you've learned patterns from data. But if those rules are written just by hand, by someone who's just like winging it, then it's still an artificial intelligence, because it's aspiring to be an intelligence, but it's not machine learning.
And of course, now we find ourselves in hopefully what's going to be a post-pandemic world. The world's opening back up. Businesses want to hit the ground running again, and we will have a lot of entrepreneurs and business leaders listening. So for those type of people, how can they or should they be using machine learning to accelerate the growth within their companies?
I always say machine learning is like the last thing you should try.
Yeah.
Ironically, because, do the simple things first, right? And a lot of times, machine learning isn't successful or even meaningful until you set up all your infrastructure, right? So you need your data pipeline, you need your data store, you need your user inputs. Typically, hire someone. Okay, so if you need AI, say there's so many uses, right, for machine learning. But let's say you need it for content moderation. It's a common one. Like you run a forum. Sooner or later, or any site where people can like post content, you're going to need moderation of that content at some point, right? It could just be filtering out not suitable for work type images. So I would always say just start manually. Just start hire. There's like so many companies that outsource human labor, right? So start there, do it manually for a while, develop a sense of what you think is good content, what you think is bad content, because it's all typically harder than you think. I mean, you can ask Mark Zuckerberg about that. Like, how do you define good content and bad content on your platform? It's actually very difficult. But do that manually for yourself. And then once you have some data, once you have some experience, then you train a model and then you automate it.
And outside of that, we might have a stack of developers listening. So for those, do you have any tips on how developers can better improve the accuracy of their machine learning models? Because again, that achieving that accuracy is a big topic right now, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, and this is where, I'm going to do a little bit of self-promotion for Nyckel. I mean, Nyckel was founded explicitly to help developers get up and started with machine learning quickly and help to focus on the right things when they improve the model. So, I mean, machine learning is such a beast, right? You have, actually my co-founder is a developer and he needed content curation for one of his side projects. And he was like, it's too much, man. Like, I can't learn this from scratch. I don't want to pick up Python, PyTorch, and go and provision a bunch of models to train, read all these papers, go provision compute for training, and then, figure out how to deploy this model on some elastic infrastructure. And it's just like, I think there's this sort of machine learning anxiety. Like, if the field is evolving so quickly, and it is pretty deep, like at this point, there's so many types of machine learning models to choose from, that you, as an outsider, if you're just kind of coming into the field, it's easy to feel like how do I know I'm doing the right thing, right? And how do I know? There's this if you write a software program, right? If it compiles, you can write a test, it works. You kind of sort of convince yourself that it's working, right? With machine learning, it's actually a little bit fuzzy because you can write something like, say again, the content moderation for like filtering out spam. How do you convince yourself it's working? Well, you have to try it on your own data, right? So even if you do it yourself, you build something, you train something, you run on your own data, and you get, say, 78% accuracy. How do you know, how do you know that what the upper bound is, right? How do you know that, okay, 78% is the best, like the best, AI researcher from DeepMind is only going to get 78%, or am I getting 78% because I don't know what the hell I'm doing, right? So that's one of the really annoying things with machine learning. It's hard to know how well you can do because the upper bound, it's defined by your data and how you process the data. So there is this anxiety where like there's so many moving pieces and you don't know which one, you don't know how well you could be doing, and you don't know which knob to tune in order to do better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. And you mentioned Nyckel there, so I've got to ask as well, how are you helping businesses? I'm conscious there will be a lot of people listening hearing about Nyckel for the first time, so I think this would be a good moment to introduce them to what you guys do. Yeah,
so Nyckel is, we try to make the most user-friendly or developer-friendly API around machine learning possible. So we've defined several types of functions, like a type of function has an input and an output. So the input could be an image, that could be several categories. Or the input could be text and the output could be several categories. And the output could also be search. We do object detection images. We do OCR, optical character recognition. So what we do is for each of those function types, we put the cleanest possible API around that problem statement. So you basically go ahead and just create a function of that type. And then you post your data to that function, like using the API. I mean, we have a UI that is not bad, right? It's actually pretty useful for training a model. So you just upload the data, you annotate it in the browser if you want. And then what we do is a couple of things. We just automatically train. So we have a big, what's called an auto ML system that basically throws the kitchen sink at your data. So we try everything. We try all the top models on your data. And we do it very, very quickly. So we have a massive parallel compute cluster. So we train a model in like 3 to 10 seconds typically. Wow. Whereas if you go to Google, they have a product called Vertex AI, which is, at the surface similar in the sense that it sort of trains and deploys a model for you. But they typically take like 3 hours. That's sort of the standard, like 1 to 3 hours. So we try to do it in a couple of seconds. And then furthermore, we deploy it immediately. And we give you an elastic endpoint to go to literally millions of invokes immediately, right? So there's this coupling between the data automatically gets trained or quote unquote compiled into a model. The model is deployed immediately and you can go ahead and put it in production. So we basically put the biggest possible box around. We train for you, find the best model, we deploy it for you and give you your endpoint too.
That's incredibly cool. And before you came on, I was also reading about how you got into, or Nyckel got into a Y Combinator. So can you tell me more about that? And what was the whole experience like for you guys there?
Yeah, I mean, Y Combinator is funny. We're 3 co-founders. I was probably the one that was most skeptical before we applied. And, it's funny because we're all like in our 40s. I think most guys or girls there are in their 20s. It's a little bit younger crowd. And I was at one of these events and the guy next to me was saying, the day I got into Y Combinator was the best day of my life. I'm like, wow, that's amazing, man. Like, congratulations. Yeah, I didn't feel like that. I've had a lot of things happening in my life. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm in this. And, they take 400 companies now, every batch. So still, apparently, like they had, I actually forgot, but it's like tens of thousands of applicants. So apparently it's still pretty selective to get in. But I was like a little bit, okay, do we really need this? Like, why are we giving away a fraction of our company to be part of this? But all in all, I think it was very useful for a couple of reasons. The network is very, very strong. So it's very easy to reach out, to talk to other founders, get advice. It's a very friendly, helpful atmosphere in those. So they have like an internal forum, basically. And then it's sort of like a boot camp, right? So you find out that they go through all the various aspects of running a company. And again, I felt like the actual advice wasn't that surprising. But it was good to know, it's good to hear it, like that we were like, hear all the things you can think about, and how should you think about complexity and what should you do at what stage. So because we're all first-time founders, it was very useful to see that whole, someone paint that whole picture and convince ourselves that, in several ways we are going against their advice, but in some ways we are. So like, at least when you're following quote unquote best practice and when you're going off on your own.
And would you do it all again if you could go back in time? Would you do that again?
Nyckel? Yeah. Oh, sorry, Y Combinator?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think it would depend on the founding team and the type of company.
Yeah. And what's next for Nyckel? I mean, where do you go from here? Is there anything you can share about what you're working on and where you're taking this vision for Nyckel to?
I mean, honestly, we're just in this cycle where we have we have a healthy amount of customers already deploying Nyckel. So we're in this cycle of talking to our customers, improving the product. We do a little bit of light marketing, podcasting, blogging, and so on, and trying to spread the word best we can.
Yeah.
But it's hard, right? It's hard. Like none of us are like famous or anything, like, so we don't have any obvious platforms to go to like kind of get users. So we just try to make sure that the people that land on the site have a really good experience, coach them through it a little bit, and then slowly but surely expand our offering. So we actually this week or next week, we're going to launch something we call localization, or it's a light version of object detection. And that's, are you familiar with, do you know what object detection is, if you say it like that?
The what? Sorry, no, object detection, no.
Object detection. So it's one of the things you can do in computer vision, where you have an image and you want to find all the objects. You want to put bounding boxes around all the objects in the image.
Yeah.
So there's like a lot of applications of that. So a lot of times it's enough to say, okay, this image is of a cat, or this image is of a dog, or so on. But sometimes you need to actually know how many, what's in the image, how many of them, and where are they, right? And then you go to something called object detection. This is one of the workhorses of computer vision.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, like I would say all platforms, we want to do object detection. It's this grind where you go and annotate for hours or even days. You train for a couple of hours and then finally have a model. But our implementation basically is, in a few minutes you have a model trained and you're good to go. So we try to make a Nyckel version of object detection that is really, really fast and really user-friendly.
Awesome. And I've loved chatting with you today. And you're just saying there how, obviously none of you are famous. You are a startup. And I love to try and help spread the word about new startups in particular. So who is your ideal business customer? What kind of problems are you solving for them? Just say if that person's listening today, they'll think, oh, okay, that resonates with me. Who would they be?
Yeah, I mean, I would love if I have a few more minutes to just talk about a few
sure.
use cases, because it's actually very inspiring to see what people are doing with the site. And it's the kind of thing where actually every company in the world could be using machine learning in one capacity or the other, even if something as simple as automatically categorizing documents or content. So in a way, every single company in the world is a Nyckel potential customer. But most of our customers tend to be a little bit smaller, right? So they tend to be small enough where they don't want to, or they can't hire their own machine learning team, right? But a few use cases. So specifically, there's a company called Humanitics.
Mm-hmm.
They are an Australian event platform where people anyone can sort of create post events, and then people can find out about the events, buy tickets, and so on, right? So when they launched in the US, they had a bunch of spam on their platform, and so it's like spam events because people just being people, and then they were able to take and this spam was like kind of, I mean, spam is such a weird thing because spam on one side could be valid content on another. There's no universal definition. Like there's no regular expression you can write to say this is spam, this is not spam. There's always going to be site specific. So they were able to train a Nyckel function with the text input is text, the output is spam or not, right? Train that in a few hours. They have plenty of examples because they had to do this manually for a long time. And then they got excellent performance and put that in production immediately. So that saved them a lot of money. So that's one example. And then one example that is completely different is a company that they grow indoor gardens. So they sell these little device, or like not a device, what should I say? It's a garden. So right, so you have a little soil and potting, and then you can grow tomatoes or peppers and so on indoors. And then it's kind of like techie. So they have to provide the right lighting and some help with watering and so on. So like an automated indoor herb garden, basically, or garden. As part of that, they have, it's equipped with cameras and stuff, and they want to figure out, they automatically detect how the plants are doing, right? Are they happy or are they wilting? Do they need water? So they were able to train a Nyckel function that just takes as input a picture of the plant, and output is is it healthy or not, right? And that's the kind of thing where they don't know anything about machine learning. They don't really need to, as long as they can provide their own data and their own annotations of that data, so sort of they know what they want, and then we can take care of all the other stuff. So we automatically find the best model, deploy it, like I said before, and give them the endpoint. So that's pretty cool. I'll give you one more. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
This gets me really excited because we just built this thing, and it's so hard to come. I knew there are like so many applications of machine learning, but they're hard to think of sometimes. And each one of these are like, I'm so excited every time they come in. There's a developer in Ukraine when the war started that wanted to help all the internally displaced refugees in Ukraine. So he built a site where you could post offers for shelter, right? And you can request shelter, right? And for some reason, his database got really messy because people were sort of clicking the wrong button. So they needed shelter, but they put it under the offer column. So he needed some way to clean that up. And he was able to train a Nyckel function to say, is this particular text entry, is it someone that offers shelter or someone that requests shelter? And it kind of blew my mind because these texts are in Ukraine, they're in Russian, they are in, some of them are in English. And he was able to train a Nyckel function very successfully to sort of clean up his bulletin board and database to correctly identify who was offering and who was requesting shelter. So that's kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, they're three great stories, Aaron. I think what really stands out is the depth of them, the different scenarios in areas that you would never have thought up yourself of different use cases, and people have just took that, run with it, and created something incredibly cool. So I hope people found that valuable. And before I let you go, though, as you have listened to the podcast before, you know what I'm going to ask next. I always ask my guests to leave everyone listening with a personal note of inspiration by sharing either a book or a song that has inspired them in their life or just means something to them. All I ask is you give me a story to accompany your choice, and we'll add it to our Spotify playlist or our Amazon wish list. But what are you going to leave everyone with today?
Yeah, I'll give you a book.
Cool.
This book is called The Beginning of Infinity. Mm-hmm. I can never remember the author's name. I actually have a terrible memory. I think that's one of the reasons I get into programming. So I don't have to remember anything. But the book is called The Beginning of Infinity. And it's an amazing book about how humans, basically it's about how we create knowledge, how we expand the amount of stuff we know, and what are the limits to this. Like, this is written by a physicist he's from UK, if I remember correctly, and just extremely big view on humanity and the universe, and what are the limits and what is holding us back, and how should we proceed as a human civilization. It's a very, very cool book.
Awesome. Well, in a world of polarization and binary thinking, I think we all need that bigger view of humanity right now. So I'll add that to our Amazon wish list and be checking it out myself. But before I let you go, for anyone wanting to find out more information about Nyckel, anything we talked about today, what's the best starting point for everything, and contacting your team, of course?
Yeah, I mean, the site is www.nyckel.com. Maybe we could put that somewhere in the bio. Just go check it out. I mean, there's plenty of contact us. We have a little contact us widget. Send me a note, oscar@nyckel.com. I'm happy to do a free ML consulting with your company. We do that with all our customers. It's just part of, we want them to succeed. So sometimes we have to help them a little bit about how to think about how to best sort of use the tools we build. We're not a consulting shop. We don't charge for that. We try to get people to use the product, but go check it out or contact me directly. Happy to chat.
Well, there's so much I've loved about our conversation today, from your origin story and those bike collars. And most importantly, I think I always say at the end of every episode, technology works best when it brings people together. And I love that you've created something here, and everything from an indoor herb garden to somebody trying to find shelter in Ukraine, and how your technologies help do that. I think it's phenomenal. So I urge people to check it out. But more than anything, just thank you for joining me today, Oscar, and sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you so much, Neil. It's been a pleasure.
Wow, so much gold in there, especially around busting a few myths and being able to look behind the buzzword of machine learning and understand how it can accelerate growth of a business and how developers can improve the accuracy of their machine learning models. And despite everything that we talked about, I think it was those use cases that really brought it all to life. But as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and you can do that by just simply emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. It doesn't have to be a written email. You can even just send a WhatsApp audio message from your phone and send it to me that way. And we can feature your voice on this episode. If you'd like a little bit longer on here and you'd like to come and sit with me on the podcast, we can do that too. So keep those messages coming in. And remember, you can also get me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. But today was all about machine learning. Well, now I'm going to spin the wheel. Where it stops will reveal what tomorrow's topic is that we're going to discuss on here. But I'm going to keep you all guessing and make you come back tomorrow, and I'll tell you what I have in store for you. So thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.